Welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Impact of Data and AI Literate Citizen. Every episode focuses on how AI impacts us both personally and professionally. And, for the past 4 years that I've been doing this podcast, I hadn't thought about how the advancement of AI technologies impacts our level of anxiety until I came across Miss Gisele Thompson. She and I were fortunate enough to eat lunch. And during this conversation, I recognized that this is an area that I had not spent a lot of time really focusing on. So I did a little research and discovered that there is no definitive research that establishes the advancements of AI technologies with the general increase of an individual's anxiety levels. But there is enough evidence to suggest that certain anxieties are related to AI and that these anxieties can impact how we feel or overall our mental health. Some studies do show that individuals can experience anxiety because they're concerned with how AI may impact their future, their work, their ability to do their job, the creativity that comes with their job. And researchers have suggested some mental conditions like anxiety and depression might be associated with this dependency of AI. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to start out with some basics so the audience is all on the same page. What is a behavioral health therapist and how do you help people?
A behavioral health therapist, psychotherapist. We are the people that when someone says, I really need to see a therapist, or my shrink said, ...
Mm-hmm.
We're those people. We work with people through the anxiety, their different anxieties, their depressions, their mental health issues, and hopefully help them achieve their goal of whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever healing they have to do in order for them to be okay with themselves.
Oh, I do want to add a disclaimer that while Gisele Thompson is here as a behavioral health therapist, that her opinions are her own from her personal experience. And there is nothing we're going to discuss today that would be displacing any trust or confidentiality that Gisele has with the individuals that she works with.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I just want to make sure I got that in there before we got too far into this topic.
No worries.
So really, the AI technologies has been around for a while, but it hasn't really been an impact in our day-to-day lives until probably within the last, I'd say, good 5 years.
Yes.
And I think COVID really sped up that process. I really want to understand when did topics around anxiety and specifically around AI start to get introduced in some of the conversations that you're having?
I think you're correct as far as COVID, but I really didn't start hearing anything about how it was impacting people's jobs or life until maybe about 2 years ago. In my profession, because I use a certain platform, AI just came into that platform where, I'm using a video screen, similar to Zoom. There's audio, there's video, and AI just came in about 6 weeks ago in order to interpret, transcribe our sessions, and it minimizes and makes the notes much more succinct than what we normally write, because as therapists we talk and it can be lengthy. So this boils it down to the absolute basic. The only problem that we have with it is the technology. I don't believe in our field has caught up with other fields because they're still working out the bugs after 6 weeks. where other people, especially people in corporate America, people in the government, they are concerned because they feel as though this is a new area that they have to learn and that they have to learn quickly. I have I've worked with different contractors who are scrambling to catch up with this because the people that they're dealing with are using AI,
Mhm.
and they have to meet even contractors have to meet them where they are. So I don't think that there's anybody that's not aware of it. And if they're not using it or learning about it, they realize that this is going to be happening soon, no matter what they're doing.
Have you noticed any certain demographics that are more prone to AI related anxieties, or so far it's just all over the place?
It's the older population, probably the senior population in many businesses,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a brand new to them form of communication, form of writing, even even with writing a note, writing a memo, writing an email. Sometimes, depending on who they're sending a text to, even a text. And the what I'm seeing is the more it's being used and the more it's available in these different situations, the easier it is for people to become used to it. If
Mm-hmm.
they're not, then the pressure is to start getting acclimated, to start using this technology. And I have to laugh because way back in the day, it
Mm-hmm.
was the BlackBerry. The pagers were no longer a thing. So then it was the BlackBerry, and you could schedule
Right.
and you could do, as antiquated as that is. But here is a new technology that is going to make things easier, is going to make memos, emails, any kind of written communication much more easy, much more succinct, and will clarify some of the things that need to be spelled out in a way that everybody understands. To me, that's just amazing. And so it's the the 20s, 30s, some of the 40s are having no problems at all.
Hmm.
It's if there is, and these are the kids who were raised
Mm-hmm.
on video games. And so nothing scares them because they know how to adjust and acclimate to these new technologies. And it just becomes a part of who they are and what they do and how they do it. And so a lot of people have gotten used to teachers now having to utilize different programs to look at papers and make sure that they're not
Mm-hmm.
copied from something, that there isn't some kind of a copyright infringement. And the kids these days know how to get around all of that. They talk about how to get around all of that. And it makes me wonder, oh my gosh, anything is possible these days. These kids are just going to be amazing with all the technologies that haven't even been invented yet. But those of us who are pretty settled and accepting of the technology that we have to use today,
Mm-hmm.
there are folks who are anxious. There are folks who feel as though they're not going to succeed in doing that. And that's where the depression comes in. That's where the anxiety comes in. And what what is so funny to me is, and I think I told you this at lunch, was I had a client and she had to put together a project. And she is from an Asian country and she wanted to make sure that she had the writing correct that would meet the need of her audience. And so I said, use AI. And she was like, I never thought of that. She did it. It was perfect. Everybody understood it. Kudos for all the work that she did. And the next time I saw her in session, it was simply a matter of now I use it all the time. Thank you, Giselle, for reminding me that that was a tool that I had that I hadn't even thought of using.
Mm.
And she's in her late 30s.
Oh,
So I think it's a matter of being open to learn, to realizing you're not too old to learn, that this is just one more step in the evolution of written communication.
you mentioned the word anxiety quite a bit, and it got me thinking, is there a difference between general anxiety and anxiety that's specifically linked to AI exposure or AI concerns?
From what
Or
I've seen
yeah.
in my experience, folks who are a little more prone
Mhm.
to having anxiety, to having depression, perhaps to feeling less than, maybe feeling as though they can't do this, that this is beyond what they can do. That's where the anxiety tends to come in. And if they're feeling unsure, uncertain of their skill sets or ability to acquire a new skill set, then it's a little more different to get them to see that it's not as difficult as they think that it is. Because they usually, not always, they
Mhm.
haven't explored what it is. Um, for example, after you and I spoke before, I
Mhm.
did go on Google and I did put in to AI, how do I learn about AI? And I
Mhm.
got pages and pages and pages of how to do that. But what it told me was what's available, what are the different aspects, and there's a basic learning, there's someone spoke about learning the math, which is going to take you many, many months, um, and different aspects. So it's not something that everybody has to know every intricacy of AI. And learning the basics of where they work is going to be a whole lot easier because you don't have to learn it all. You might simply have to know how to text with AI, how to understand what's being said to you, which is easy. It's just a much more clarified way of communicating. And once people understand that and realize, as with my client, it's just not that hard to get the basics. And then you can build and grow on that. But you have to start somewhere in this day and age.
So you've highlighted that some of these triggers, I'll say specific aspects of AI that maybe trigger anxiety have been this rapid change or the unknown. But are you finding other patterns? For example, trust or lack of control? Or is it really more focused on just your analogy of I went from paper to pager to BlackBerry to
Right.
phone? Yeah.
I really think it is that simple. This is the next level of communication,
Mhm.
of clarification, of how people are going to be working now and in the future until something new is developed. And once people understand, and this is funny because it's my overthinkers
Mhm.
that make it worse than it actually is. And sometimes we will just do a brief, okay, what do you have in your phone that's AI based? And even I can tell them how to use it.
Mhm.
So, and then they see, oh, it's really no different than typing into a text.
Mhm.
It's just a different format. But until they actually see it, they can't accept it, especially if it's something that has to do with their work.
Mhm.
It's much bigger in their heads than it actually is in reality. And once we can get past that, then there's the acceptance and then the openness to learn because they don't have
But
to know all about AI. They just need to learn the few tools that they need in their workplace.
if we have individuals that have now moved to at least understand it more, I'm able to use it, I'm able to accept it, then have you experienced or have spoken to individuals that they understand it enough to realize, okay, I'm not sure that I trust the decision that's being made, or I have a fear of maybe the unknown or the unpredictability of AI.
I think that's part of where the anxiety happens
Mhm.
before they're able to accept, before they're able to understand what is being asked for in their workplace or in their schooling. Um, and once they see it actually happening, once they're able to use it, as I said before, like if it's in a text or an email,
Mhm.
and how that is handled um, by themselves who would be sending something, but also by the receiver, and then what they get back. And I think in some ways they're surprised that it's not nearly as hard as their overthinking allowed them to be,
Mhm.
to feel. And it's the doing it, it's the ease of doing it, and it's the being open to learning that allows them to grow with AI. I haven't heard anything as far as um, not trusting it,
Okay.
other than before when they're in active anxiety, where they're in active depression. I'm never going to get this. Nobody's going to be able to teach this to me.
Yeah.
Um, they're going to fire me because I'm not able to communicate the way that I'm supposed to be communicating now.
Right.
Once they've had a few successes with it on a smaller basis, then they become more self-confident that they're able to learn this and they're able to grow.
Hmm.
And so then it becomes a success. They're able to do this and they are able to grow. For example, the client I was talking about just a couple of minutes ago, um, once once her project was submitted to her team, like I said, she uses it all the time now,
Hmm.
everywhere.
I want to explore something that you started to touch on, and it's kind of a two-part question. Do
Sure.
you feel that individuals could feel isolated because perhaps others around them don't share the same concerns that they have about AI? Or perhaps they may feel isolated because they don't feel comfortable asking others around them questions about AI.
Yes, I have heard that because they feel as though the people who are using it frequently, who
Hmm.
understand it better than they do,
Hmm.
who are more at ease with using it,
Hmm.
they feel as the folks who need the help feel as though they don't want to bother those people because those people won't want to take steps back to help them.
Mm.
And yet, what I've heard later is that because it's new to everyone, everybody started in the same place. Nobody knew what this was initially until they started their own learning about it, whether it was corporate America was teaching AI
Hmm.
to employees, but everybody had to start at the beginning. And so, what seems to be happening in this day is people are welcoming those questions. People are happy to help other people because they know what it felt like in the not so distant past when they started.
That's a really good observation that, and we could replace AI with any emerging technology, but because in today's discussion is about AI, because AI
Sure.
has been such a rapid learning curve for so many people for only the last, let's say 3 or 4 years,
Right.
that it's a lot easier for, say, me to remember what it was like 4 years ago to learn something and be able to relate versus say,
Yes.
for me to try to remember what it was like in college, it would be difficult for me to relate to a college student, at this point.
Right.
Um, I hadn't thought about that before until you just said that. I'm like, well, that makes sense because I know what it was like when I first learned about this. Um, I can relate. I can better explain it. I understand how they feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very much so. And especially with AI, it's such a wonderful technology that once people get on board with it and become comfortable with it, the sky's the limit. Not that they're going to be using every aspect of AI or wanting to learn about every aspect of AI, but in their day to day, whether it's at work or at home, they become comfortable with it.
I
And then they're kind of like the next generation of people who are going to be helping the ones coming in who don't, where AI will be new to them.
so that's actually I take notes when we're on these calls of like, oh, that's really interesting. We should like drill into that more. You and I have both touched on throughout this conversation that the more you know, sometimes that's good, and sometimes the more you know, sometimes that's bad, because you start to learn more of um, the gaps or where it's not working or assumptions in how AI models are, uh, written or biased. So I think I'd be interested to know what you feel the role of digital literacy or AI literacy. On the surface, I would say, hey, AI digital literacy, absolutely that's going to play a role in helping everybody understand it better and they're going to feel better. But after this conversation, I think that there's the opposite that could play, that the more you know, the more you start to see the biases and the more you start to have more questions. So could digital literacy or AI literacy worsen anxiety over the next couple of years?
I can see that happening. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of AI on the platform that I use.
Mm-hmm.
And the platform that I use is worldwide. And what I'm seeing is the younger therapists are much more open to using this. The older therapists are pretty well cemented into the way that they've always done things. And I have been using the technology because it does my work so much faster, so much easier, so much more succinct, and the point still gets across. Instead of me taking 20 minutes to write one aspect of a note, AI takes care of it within half an hour. All the notes are done for me.
Mhm.
I only have a few boxes to check, and that's it. So something that took me 45 minutes to do is now taking me 10 minutes to do. That alone frees me up to do more. I have more time to do sessions. I have more time to work with my clients. And then we have an opportunity to review what has been transcribed.
Mhm.
And honest to goodness, AI nails it every time. It's amazing.
You've mentioned the role of therapist and the role of learning. Do you think going forward, um, because there is a background of knowledge and education that comes with, your job.
Yes.
And I have already seen that there's a huge gap in the undergraduates not having enough knowledge in their regular coursework around these emerging technologies. So the question I would ask you is, should all therapists in the mental health field have specialized training that would deal with or help them deal with technology related anxieties?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the first place that I got that kind of training
Mm-hmm.
was when I was in grad school. And we're going back to 2017. And
Okay.
that was when the instructor started using the program to critique our work, especially our papers, to ensure that we hadn't done any copyright infringement, whether it was from articles
Right.
or other people. So that was, to me, that was very comforting because that way they couldn't cheat. Everything that we posted, everything that we presented was put through the same technology of ensuring that it wasn't stolen from someone else.
Right.
So, so right up front, we learned that this program ensures that you can't cheat. And if you cheat, you will be found out. And that happened several times in school. And I've never been prone to cheating because that's not how I operate. I love doing my research. I love learning about whatever the topic was. And so it was important to me to submit the best work that I could. But I liked that this program could assess if there was anyone who tried to get by with that.
Mhm.
I also made me appreciate that it was good at picking out things that stood out to this program in my writings, in everybody's writings, and good, bad, or indifferent if it stood out. Even though it
Mhm.
wasn't an infringement, it still pointed out positives and negatives. And I appreciated that. I think I appreciated it more because it was coming from a program rather than a person, and it was objective. And I
In
like
in
that.
your in your graduate degree, was there any initial conversations that training for anxiety, for just general anxiety, needs to be different than for anxieties that are technology related? Or is really anxiety just anxiety?
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Yes. Anxiety is anxiety
Okay.
because it's all that chatter that goes on in our heads. And it's the overthinking, it's the doubting yourself, it's the lack of confidence, it's the you're sure that you're the only one in the room who can't do this. everything, that began when we were kids. And once you help someone get past the notion that they can't, or it won't happen, or however they're spinning it in their heads, once they get past that and realize they are overthinking and it's just not going to be that bad. And yes, you can do this because look how far you've come in your career. Look how far you've come in your life. Look what a great mom you are. Look what a terrific dad you are. And pointing out all the positives and being able to take the strengths in those different aspects and bring them into what's making them feel less than, what's scaring them. And then we can get to the openness of receiving this information and the acceptance of what this new technology can do. And it's also learning what it can't do. It's not the be all and end all in their life. There are many other things that are. And this is just a help in their work. That's all. It's wonderful, but it's not their lives. It's not going to make or break who they are.
I want to pivot to coping mechanisms. What strategies would you find most effective for those who are trying to manage AI or technology-induced anxieties?
We need to find them um, tutorials. We
Mhm.
need to find them perhaps beginning AI types of courses, where they have the um, community classes. I know up in Harford County, they had on their offerings. For $25, you get however many weeks being exposed to AI. There's a lot of resources out there, and it's just a matter of finding one that's going to work for that person. And what I try to do is we will initiate that search in session, but then it's up to that person to continue the search and find the thing that would most work for them with their time, their schedules, and their lives. But it's out there. They just have to find it. And then once they become accustomed to it, then it's easier for them to grow and for their anxiety to dissipate.
So if you could provide a one takeaway, so an individual is at the moment, right now having some fear of AI or putting their hands on technology. Is there a technique you can think of that would be effective for helping reframe that, would at least get them over the initial, overwhelming thoughts?
My first question would
Mhm.
be, tell me what technology you use today. And what did it feel like when you were first introduced to this technology? What were your thoughts? What were your feelings?
Right.
Did it make sense to you? Did it not make sense to you? Was it really scary? Was it something that you were looking forward to learning? Whether it was that BlackBerry back in the day, or your first phone, or your first iPhone, the technology is all around us. What was your feeling when you first experienced each of these levels in technology?
So it's finding a way for that person to feel relatable in their own experiences based on their past interactions with other technologies that they've had to learn from the
Yes,
beginning. Okay, I like that.
yes, because they've succeeded, even if it was only exposure to the phone. They know what they're doing now. Back in the day, you know, the flip phone was a whole lot easier than my iPhone.
That's a good point. It was just flip it open and press a couple buttons and that's it.
I know, right, right.
Now if I open up my phone, I think I have, and I have compared this to my kids' phones. So I have teenage daughters, and I only have maybe less than 50 apps on my iPhone, but I looked at theirs the other day and it's probably close to like 85. It's like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, I know. I was like, what do they all do?
Right. And they
What do
know
you
them.
need
They
all
know
those
where
for?
they are. They know what they do. It's amazing.
If we look at your perspectives on leaning forward, do you anticipate that AI related anxieties are going to increase over the next few years, or are you going to predict that certain trends are going to start emerging that maybe we haven't seen yet?
I think training trends are going to be emerging. I know for us, we have to have continuing education units every year. We have to have 20 every year. And I'm
Mhm.
just seeing this past year where some of the trainings are technology based. I haven't seen anything directly about AI, but I think that's just a matter of time, and that will be coming. And what it does is normalize the AI process. Okay, we're all going to have to do this. We're all going to have to understand this. How can we make it easier and palatable for everybody? And because of the younger folks coming in who are already well versed in technology, I don't see that that's going to be as much of an issue as it is with the older folks today, or people who don't have the exposure to all of the new technology, even some of the
Mhm.
old technology. I think with the younger folks, it's going to be a whole lot easier, and especially as the trainings and the education in AI emerges. And I get the sense that the older folks are going to learn what they have to learn, do what they have to do, and that's probably as deep as they're going to go unless they find the rare ones find that, oh my gosh, I've got to look into this. I've got to see what this is really all about.
I think that's
But I
very
think
optimistic. It is
I
very optimistic.
have 4 children. I see how they approach technology. I see how my grands approach technology.
Mhm.
And to them, it's, learning new technology is nothing. It's just part of, okay, so here's my new phone. This is what I've got to learn. Here's my new this. This is what I've got to learn. Okay, this is AI. Let's learn about this because I'm
Mhm.
going to need it in my work. To them, it's just moving forward. It's okay, it's another technology. Let's go. Nothing intimidating, nothing worrisome.
Right.
It's not as big as and bad. If anybody ever, those kids ever thought like that, it's it seems to be when the pressure is on, when people's jobs depend on knowing how to do this,
Mhm.
when in the world they might
Mm.
have to learn how to do this, whatever that this is. And again, going back to what I said at the beginning, it could be a text, it could be an email, it could be a report. And again, it's not as bad as they think it is in their heads. Because once they understand the basics, whether they get it through a training, whether they get somebody to help them, whether they call their grandkid and say, show me how to do this. However it is, it's never as bad. And then they become more open to learning, okay, what do I actually have to do in the workplace? Like, do I have to use this in the future? Outside of my job? I don't know.
I would have thought along the same lines as you about 2 years ago, but what I've witnessed is for those that have moved beyond, they understand how this works in their job, they understand what skills they need to do so they can feel less apprehensive about, is AI going to take over my job? They feel comfortable that the answer is no. And then as they start that continuous learning, I think what I'm going to predict as a future trend for you is that
Thank you.
you will have an increase in patience, because the more they become knowledgeable, the more they understand how AI works, the more they understand its limitations, its bias, that their interaction with how decisions are being made on their behalf. Did I get the mortgage? Am I getting my credit card? Why did my credit card percentage go up? AI is being utilized more in how insurance premiums are predicted. And I think an increase of anxiety stemmed from trust. I'd be interested to talk to you like in a year from now. We should have regular
Yes.
check-ins. Every year we should do a check-in now.
Yes.
But that's my trend. And I am inviting you back a year from now. And let's see, what trends are coming. Is mine completely off base because that didn't happen? Or are we seeing trends that you and I haven't even been able to predict yet?
I can clearly see what it is that you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And at this moment, I don't know
Yeah.
because I am making my observations just on what I'm seeing today
Mm.
and how I have to work with patients who have the anxiety and who have the depression because of the new technology, um, and how we get them through that.
Right.
So I can easily see that. But I will be looking forward to seeing you in a year
Yeah.
so that we can see exactly what has happened. Because it sounds like once it becomes more and more a part of our lives, and if there's a negative impact or perceived negative impact, then that really will
Mm-hmm.
bring on more anxiety and depression.
I'm going to change my invitation 6 months from now, because I realize that the advancement of AI technologies is moving so quickly. Gosh, in a year from now, we could have met the trends and we've moved beyond the trends. And so I'm going to look to invite you back sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
That sounds like a plan.
And let's do a recap of kind of where we were during this call and what are we seeing in the past, in the next 6 months.
That will be fascinating. Thank you. Yes.
So, yeah, sure. So we are coming to a close as we wrap up. One last question for you, Gisele. Any specific, I'm not going to use the word advice because I think that might be too strong, but any recommendations on anyone out there who could be feeling very much anxiety related to this technology that they're experiencing today?
That is just, it's not as bad as their thinking is telling them that it is. And talk to friends, talk to other people, go on YouTube, listen to your podcasts, because we're all going to be, if we're not already at some point in our lives, involved with this. And my perspective is the more that I know, the more well versed that I am, the better it is for me, because that way I understand more of what is occurring. And even when you were talking about um, the impact of AI on insurance,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that. I did
Oh,
not
that's my
realize.
next episode.
Oh, nice.
Dial in 2 weeks from now, because I've been doing a 5-month research, in-depth analysis of usage-based insurance, specifically how AI is making decisions on your auto insurance premiums. Yep,
That's scary.
it is.
Yes.
It is. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I am going to wrap up this call with a quote from the G.I. Joe cartoon that I used to watch on Saturday mornings when I was 12.
Oh,
And the G.I. Joe cartoon started out with the wonderful music that they always have, but it specifically, the theme was knowledge is power. And the more you know, knowledge is power. And I think that's exactly what I've heard from you today is the more you know, the more you can learn, the more you can ask questions, no matter where that knowledge is coming from, all of it is going to help you become more powerful in how you continue on with your day.
Exactly. Exactly. Well said. Way to go,
Well,
G.I. Joe.
I know, since I was 12 and I still remember that. Thank you so much, Gisele, for your time. I do appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'll see you in 6 months.
Stars align and the skies are over boundless.